Welcome to episode 18 of Taking It to the Nub. I'm your host, Boston Jimmy, and today we have David Blanco as our guest. David is the president and CEO of Blanco Cigars. You're going to learn a lot about Blanco Cigars and a lot about David on this show. So have your questions. Chime in when you need to. I'll be checking my phone out throughout the episode. And at this point, let me bring in our special guest, David Blanco. David, welcome.
Hello. What's up, brother?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I feel like I should be wearing my Chicago Cubs hat, though.
That would have been useful because we're two guys that follow teams that sucked forever and seem to find a way around it.
I'm wearing blue, so it's my Cubs.
Okay, that's fair enough. And you know, when you think about the Cubs, and I'm going to get right into this. You think about the Cubs and the long run that they had. I think your family's generational experience in the cigar world goes longer than the Cubs.
Yes, it does. Actually, back to the 1800s, 1886. I'm the fifth generation. The family's been involved one way or another. We started in tobacco growing in Cuba back then. And it has morphed into cigar manufacturing as well as tobacco growing. Still on both sides of the fence. My factory, I closed my personal factory that I opened up back in 2000. And then I shifted my production to my cousin's facility in Esteli, Nicaragua, and we did some work in Danlí, Honduras, and the other facility. The family down there actually has 4 factories, 2 in Nicaragua and 2 in Honduras.
The family relation, direct family relation, I understand, to the Plasencia is your father is Nestor Sr.'s first cousin?
Second cousin.
Second
Yes.
cousin. So that would be on your grandmother's side?
Absolutely, on my grandmother's side. So therein lies the familial link and tie, and so that's why we moved our. When I closed our factory, it was out of necessity. My uncle Francisco, my father's brother, and I call Nestor Sr. uncle, but he's technically cousin.
I did the same thing with my father's cousin.
That's what it's an elderly next generational thing. Now Nestor Andres, as we call him, or Nestor Jr. and I, we're 4 years apart, so we call each other primo, cousin. So we had to close our factory out of necessity. My father's brother, my true uncle Francisco, he became ill. He was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. He's 20-year military veteran, 100% disabled now. He ended up, after we opened the factory, he started getting ill, like out of nowhere. He ended up not being able to walk, and he was the one running the day-to-day operation in the factory. So we had to close it, and that's when we called Nestor and said, "Hey, would you mind if we moved our production down to your facility in Esteli back in 2000?" And he said, "Of course, come, your family." And so that's what we did, and we haven't looked back since. People have asked me, why don't I open a factory again?
If you got the Plasencias with you, you really don't need a factory.
Yeah, I used to tell people, why buy a boat when your uncle has a yacht?
Right.
I mean, I could do it, but those guys do that very well. I understand what it takes and appreciate what it takes, and therefore I rather focus on my expertise and what I've decided to do, advancing the ball with Blanco Cigars, with blending, with distribution, with advertising, marketing, with doing things internationally, like they are actually right now with their brand. They've decided in the past couple of years to go head, deep into promoting their own name. So they understand what that side of the fence is now. It's definitely different than manufacturing and farming.
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. So I kind of promoted this show to be kind of a past, present, and future with David Blanco. So
I'm going to smoke a cigar while you're doing that. So let me.
What are you going to smoke?
I don't know. Pick a card, any card here.
I think you might want to smoke the.
I'll let you choose. You pick a card, any card. These are all different cigars. Pick one.
Pick that cool red, white, and blue tip cigar thing you got there.
All right, the Above and Beyond.
Above and Beyond. We'll get to talking about that in a little while. I'm smoking a Blanco Nine. probably probably the favorite out of the line that you have, but I have not smoked the Above and Beyond yet, so I can't make comment on that yet.
All right, you got some in your bag?
So you go back in time before David Blanco was born. Father Cesar was in Cuba.
Yeah.
And he was part of the Cubans that left and landed in America, and you ended up going up the Chicagoland area.
Mm-hmm.
But your father had a real interesting job in Cuba, didn't he?
My grandfather and grandmother. My father was young, but he did participate in the extracurricular activities of the day, which was, i.e., the Cuban Revolution. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a point there in time where they were actually aligned with the revolution until they figured out that Castro really wasn't the person that they thought he was. And then they had to flee. Mm-hmm. And as they were fleeing, as the story I was told by your dad, by the way, how's your dad doing?
He's doing well. Thank you for asking.
Tell him Diane and I sent our love to him, because he's such a fine gentleman. And the way he described it is like they were being chased. They were just like a mile or 2 miles ahead of the secret police or whatever, try to catch him from leaving the island from his family. And they got away. They luckily got over on the boat and got over here. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. So the death squads were after him, and he was tipped off by one of his friends. And when I say after them, it was my grandfather they were after. And my father happened to be with him. And my grandmother and Francisco, the younger son, was back at the house. And when they sent the death squads to get my grandfather, my father was with him. And this is how they literally got a phone call, said they're coming, get out, and disguised themselves, my grandfather in particular, and got on a boat, little frickin' fishing boat that didn't have enough fuel to get anywhere. And they just pointed north and prayed. And they got picked up by the Coast Guard. When my grandfather said who he was, they, because he was an official at the time in the revolutionary government, he was threatening to blow the whistle on Fidel, because Fidel started to show his true colors. And at that time, there were 3 heads of the monster, as they say. Fidel was one, Che Guevara was the second, and Camino Cienfuegos was the third. Camino particularly had the entire eastern side of the island with the army. And so Fidel hadn't consolidated his power yet. And this was a threat that if people found out, especially the other heads of the revolutionary regime, that he was trying to usurp power and was doing backdoor deals, trying to do things with the Russians, that they'd cut him off at the knees. So my grandfather actually found out, because he was head of an intelligence type agency at the time, without going into too much detail, for the Cuban government, revolutionary government. And he found out and didn't know Fidel was behind the whole thing. And Fidel found out because my grandfather said, hey, there's something going on. Not knowing Fidel was behind the entire thing, and was told, don't worry about it, we got it. Meanwhile, Raul Castro was the man in charge at head of the death squad. Mm-hmm. The last regime after Fidel. So don't be fooled by the handshaking with President Obama at the baseball game and all this other stuff. This guy's a Cold Stone murderer and a bunch of other stuff that he's done. That anybody that knows the history or was there knows what he is and knows who he is. But without getting political, and they get land, and my grandfather says who he is, and the CIA wraps him up into a safe house in Coral Gables, Florida. Because they realize he's a wealth of knowledge and information. This is how my family got here. Right. So he says, listen, I got to call my wife. She's still in Havana. She's next, right? They're going to try to get her to leverage him. So he calls her and says, listen, I'm in Miami with my, Cesar, which is my father.
So your grandmother is still in Havana.
Oh yeah.
And this is Grandma Plasencia.
No, Blanco. Well,
Blanco.
This is the grandmother that's related to Plasencia.
Okay. Okay.
That's related through her side. He says, get off the phone when you have the phone with me. Take Francisco and get on a plane. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just get out of the country. So she literally hangs up the phone with him, gets on a plane, because this was before they had ceased all flights without special permissions and everything else. And she left to Miami, landed in Miami, and the government and CIA was waiting for her. And that's it. Shirt on their backs. That's what they came with.
Then you ended up getting relocated to Chicagoland.
Yes, through the Catholic Charities, believe it or not. Because there were a lot of Cubans at that time that were immigrating. It was a huge cluster of Cuban nationals in Miami, in that area. So they started bringing in all of these different organizations to help try to disperse the huge population of Cubans that had come in. And some major areas of the country got them. Some of them were Chicago, New Jersey, which was Uniontown, which is a huge population there in New Jersey. Believe it or not, Las Vegas got a population of Cubans there too. So these were some of the major cities that they tried to disperse the Cubans, so they were able to have some more support and logistics as they adapted to their new life, which was in this country now. My grandfather actually, this actually happened after the Bay of Pigs. When I say this, my grandfather was involved with the Bay of Pigs and part of the invasion, as well as my father back then. And when that became a disaster, a debacle, that's when they realized they weren't going back. That this wasn't going to be, we're returning back home. So that's when the Catholic Charities started dispersing and other people around the country. So
you get up there, your family's up there.
Pop out.
David Blanco hasn't been born yet.
Yeah.
All right. The family's not in the cigar business at this point.
Well, not anymore, no, because the family that was in the cigar business actually stayed behind. It was only the immediate family that got out.
Okay.
But we still had family in Pinar del Rio that was in the tobacco industry. My grandmother's cousins and things of that nature, they were involved. And then, of course, the Plasencias, which were family at that time, also were involved. But only the immediate nucleus of the family was displaced. So everybody was still in Cuba.
So your dad went into the military or government business?
Yep. He went to school, finished his school, joined the military. Francisco joined the military, went to Vietnam. My father joined the Army. He's been all over the world. He's done some other things as well. He was with the Chicago Fire Department, retired the deputy chief there. He's done some federal law enforcement time as well. He's had a very storied career. As you know, you've spoken to him.
I know.
He's been all over the planet. Done a lot of different things.
David Blanco was born, right? And you're growing up. Your father's still smoking cigars?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're around cigars.
Absolutely. It's part of the family.
And somewhere along this time frame, a young David Blanco gets into a conversation with the dad, or the dad get in a conversation. So how did Blanco Cigars come to be, and when did that actually happen?
So I was a young man, and as young man, it was my experience with, people ask sometimes, what was your first experience? When did you have your first cigar? How did this happen? So my first experience with a cigar was more than just, here, son, have a cigar, you're of age. It was, here's a cigar. Now, it's been around my growing up, smelling the cigar smoke, the old men playing dominoes and drinking Cuban coffee and smoking. This was always around, right? So it was just something that was around me. It was nothing that I, so now I'm of age, whatever that means, of age. I can't legally say what age I was, right? So I get this cigar, and it's not, here's a cigar, smoke it, enjoy it, welcome to manhood. It was, here's a cigar, and here's the story about this cigar. And this cigar is the story of your family, what your heritage was, where your family came from. This just isn't a piece of rolled up tobacco. This is something of generations of your family that you haven't been able to experience since we had to leave Cuba. You are the next generation and the first generation born off the island. and you need to understand your heritage. Let me explain to you what this is. It's not just rolled up tobacco. It's not just a smoke. For a lot of people, it's a hobby. For us, it was a livelihood, a legacy, and a generational heritage. So I got the explanation with this whole thing. So my experience was more, my eyes were like, wow, this means a whole lot more than what most people's first cigar means to them sentimentally to their father and the experience they have. For me, it was, let me tell you all about the family history for the past 5 generations. So it was a lot heavier experience for me. That being said, I smoked it. I enjoyed it. It was definitely something that I learned to appreciate the more I did it, like anything else. And I just became the young kid that was smoking cigars. And most of my friends weren't smoking cigars. Actually, none of them were, because at that time in the 80s, so I'm giving you a little bit of idea, it wasn't a popular thing for anybody other than those old men I was describing to you before. Drinking Cuban coffee, playing dominoes, to smoke cigars. It was an old man thing. It wasn't a young guy thing. It wasn't something that women, for sure, weren't really doing. So it wasn't until the early 90s, 1992, I believe, was the first year that Cigar Aficionado, the magazine, came out. And suddenly the yuppies started smoking cigars, and it became in vogue, and it was this hip thing to do. Miami Sound Machine was out, and all, it was all culture, right? And it was like, yeah, cigars are cool. So all my friends started coming that didn't know anything about anything, said, hey, Dave, they smoke cigars. We should ask him. I became de facto the subject matter expert overnight. How do you cut it? How do you light it? What's a good cigar? How do you smoke it? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, this is how you do it, giving them, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, what are you smoking? Well, I was getting some cigars that the family were making, right? So I had a tie, right? And they're like, well, can I get one?
Well, you're getting cigars out of Cuba?
No, not out of Cuba.
Out of?
The family that's already out, because the Placencias have been out. And from other sources. I mean, I was getting it from other places. But we had a tie, obviously, right? So they were like, yeah, let me get one of yours. Like, okay, so I would give one, and then my friend would see that and go, hey, can I get one? And can I get one? And I was like, come on, guys. And then I was like, well, we'll buy them from you. And I'm like, buy them from me? And then I was like, this might be an opportunity for me to get back into what the family heritage and business was that I heard about for all these years. I said, well, I can't do this by myself. By this time, I'm in my mid-20s. Mid-20s, that's it. So I approached my father and my uncle, and I said to them, listen, this cigar thing is blown up. It's completely changed.
Right.
It's a lifestyle now. It's a culture now. This magazine has blown it up, and you can't afford most of the things in the magazine, but you can afford the cigar. So what does everybody do? They try to live the lifestyle by buying the cigar,
right?
Even though they don't know what they're doing. It's just want to live that lifestyle. So my uncle and my father look at each other and go, well, if he's really serious, we'll know, because the only way this is what they tell me after. They go, if you're serious about this, we'll become your partners. However, you have to invest everything you own. Are you still willing to do it? So
what did you own? Did you own anything?
Well, at the time, I had already finished my college. I had already been in years in the military, still a reservist at that point. I had left the sheriff's department and had joined, I was a deputy sheriff in Cook County. And then I had joined the Chicago Fire Department instead of Chicago Police, because after being a sheriff in Chicago, I was done. I was like, if I go to the police department, I'm going to end up in an orange jumpsuit myself, because this was crazy. It was crazy, even back then. This was during Rodney King days and all that kind of stuff. It was bananas. So I went to the fire department, and I was a fire paramedic, and that's when I approached it. So I was making some money, but I was a young man, and I was saving for some different things like a house and some other things. And they said, well, if you invest everything you own, we'll go ahead and we'll back you. So I was like, I'm all in. And that's when they realized I was serious, because they wanted to make sure somebody at 25, 26, 27, whatever it was, how serious can you be about an industry like that you have no idea about with regard to that kind of business?
Right.
So I had resources and people who did. They just wanted to make sure that this wasn't something I'd get tired of and grow tired of in a year or two, like a young guy usually does, attention deficit disorder. You can't focus. I was serious. So they did. They backed me up, and we were off to the races. Los Blancos Cigar Company Incorporated happened in 1998. By the time we actually stamped our incorporation, and that's when we started.
So you were kind of coming in at the end of the boom.
Yeah.
Where were you making these Los Blancos cigars?
Ybor City, Florida, which is Tampa. So we bought a facility, kitty corner from, if anybody's down here, kitty corner from the Columbia restaurant.
Sure.
If you're standing in front of Columbia and you look out onto the street, it's kitty corner. There's actually a cigar shop there in part of that area now. But that was our factory where we were rolling. Kind of like what they did in Little Havana in Miami, where they had these little factories. And we had our factory there. We had cousins that had come over from Cuba since then that were rollers, and we employed them. And he had friends that come over that were Cuban rollers, so we employed all of the friends. So we had Cuban rollers. We were getting tobacco from Plasencia because we had a relationship with them. We just weren't making there, so it was easy for us to get tobacco. We had the manpower. Everything happened in 1998. We hit the ground running. It wasn't until 2000, like I mentioned earlier, with my uncle getting ill, that he was the one we all had our responsibilities, the three of us. So his responsibility was to run the day-to-day operation of the factory. Mine was blending and manufacturing or making the product, is the concept, design, artwork, and sales, right? I was going to be the guy on the road selling the product out there and shaking hands. My father wasn't going to travel. He had another job. And my uncle Francisco was running the factory operation, so he couldn't do it. So it was my job to do all that. So when Frank got ill, and he suddenly was like, listen, I can't walk. I can't run the operation. My father and I looked at each other like, what are we going to do? And so that's when we picked up the phone to Plasencia and said, we're in a bind. This is the situation with Frank. He's ill. Can we just move and shift production? And that's when I mentioned to you before. They said, come on down.
So then you moved production there. But somewhere along the way, shortly thereafter, you're in 1998 now, and then 2001 hit. You had 9/11, and your father and you both got deployed, right?
Right. So I mentioned to you before, I was reserves after, and continued with reserves. I never left the reserves. I stayed in. It was my way of continuing to serve my country. We have a strong sense of obligation to my family. My father, of course, is military as well. My uncle, of course, as I mentioned, my brothers were in and out. I was the only one that really stayed in for any duration. So we had just set up the shop down there in 2000. 2001 comes, we're humping along, and then 9/11. My father is immediately activated and mobilized and deployed, and he's like, here's the keys. Good luck. I'll probably go out for a year, maybe two. Make it happen. Do what you can. Because we all remember that those of us that were there and alive, everything in the world was upside down. Nobody knew what was next going to happen, when the next plane was going to fall out of the sky and hit what, but we knew that we were under attack, right? So he handed the keys and he was gone. It was 6 months later that I got a call, and he ended up going to Iraq, and I ended up getting a call, and I ended up going to Afghanistan, and I was gone for 18 months. So when I left, I literally handed the keys to one of the family members and said, listen, if orders come in, can you please ship them? Because we had a sales force on the road, but they were all independent reps, right? So once you fall off the map with the organization and the office and everything else, these guys lost interest. We lost our reps. We started falling off the shelves everywhere. And by the time I got back, the company was in ruin. We had lost 92, 93% of our sales for annual sales. I mean, it was like starting from scratch. We just evaporated. We missed IPCPR, which is the trade show. We just vanished. So when I came back, my father literally looked at me and said, listen, the world gets in the way sometimes. Life gets in the way. Maybe this just wasn't meant to be. There wasn't anything you did wrong, but the world sometimes has other plans for you.
You got dealt a different set of cards for a moment there.
Yeah. And so he said, listen, there's no shame if when now that you're back, this is obviously at a point where we have to make a decision of, are you going to attempt to revitalize this thing, or are you just going to move on and do something else? And remember, I had years of service. I was a law enforcement officer. I was in the fire department, so I could do other things. I had education. I could have done a number of things, and I had offers. I had offers, contractual offers, to go back to the sandbox over there as a contractor. I had a lot of options, but I had never quit. And for better or for worse, personal character here, I had never quit at anything in my life. And that drove me to say, no, I am not quitting at this. This was not a failure because of what we did, which my father recognized. But it was just something that I couldn't let go, especially after the work that we had done and the successes we had had. Because back then, we were one of the very early, what we now call boutique brands. We were one of the first back then. You know, there were very few around us. There were a few, but not many. So I was like, this is still an open marketplace for us. And now we're doing it on a tightrope, right? Because we lost money closing the factory. Then we lost the money after closing for 2 years. So now the budget to do this was on life support. This was me traveling the country, trying to get accounts back, trying to open up tobacconists again and make this thing work. That's what it was. And so I was traveling 300 days a year on the road, living, breathing, eating, sleeping cigars.
Steve from Frontline Cigars says, David's a great guy. First big name I met in the industry and always available to talk to. Such a great guy. He says, other than the booze behind you, what else do you like to pair with cigars?
Coffee. That's a no-brainer. The first cigar that I ever blended was for coffee, because that was the first thing somebody said to me. He said, okay, when are we going to blend cigars? What do you want to blend? I said, well, the first thing I do in the morning with a cigar is have a cup of coffee. So I better blend a cigar that pairs well with the coffee. And that's what I did.
And then Habano Aaron.
Hello, Habano Aaron. Hello. Long time no see.
Yeah, she says those COVID beards are out of control. I said,
yeah, this is a COVID beard, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so she's chimed in. Gabby Caffey chimed in. Gabby says, I would love to set up a factory in Florida. Hint, hint. So you get moving on this now. You pick this monster back up. You know, you got Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. You put them all back together again. And we're going back into Blanco Cigars, and the rest is kind of history. You've successfully birthed the brand through some interesting challenges. What were the challenges that you had to do other than trying to get more reps back?
How much time we got?
I'll give you 10 minutes on that.
Okay. So first challenge was the debacle of the economy after 2004, 2005. The economy started to slide. For those of you that remember with President Bush, started going downhill, right? So then Obama. So again, we're a luxury brand, right? We're a luxury lifestyle brand. So when people are not able to pay their mortgages and things of that nature, they're not too worried about where my cigar is going to be paid and how am I getting them. So we had a contraction in the industry for consumption overall. There was also the beginning of the internet back then. So we had focused on brick and mortars as a boutique brand. That's what you do. Your shops, your retail partners build the brand with you. That's how this industry works. So there was a change there. So that started to siphon off some of the sales. Then it was Obama coming into office, instituted one of the first things he instituted was SCHIP. So SCHIP stands for State Children's Health Insurance Program. It's a federal program in which, at the time, the Obama administration decided, we need to raise funding for underprivileged children nationally. We have this fund for healthcare. How are we going to raise taxes for that? I know, we'll tax the tobacco industry. So we went from a federal excise tax of, I think it was like 2.5 cents a cigar. I think that's what it was, to 41 cents a cigar overnight. So that means, for all you guys to follow the bouncing ball here, I would import 100,000 cigars at a time. I'd have to go to the customs people to get my cigars released from the bonded facility at the, at the airport or wherever it was, or at the dock if it was coming in a container, whatever. I would have to pay the duty, and then they would release the product. So I'd bring in 100,000 cigars. I'd pay $2,500, $2,500. That's 2.5 cents per 100,000, right? It went to $41,000.
Just to get them in your hands.
Yeah. Oh, new rule. That's like over a 700% tax. It was the largest tax increase of any kind in the history of the United States. From that to that. So that drove a lot of people to drink, and it depleted resources very quickly and cash flow. So at that point, we were able to sustain that for a little bit of time, but it was starting to drag us into the mud, and we were going to sink because we just couldn't sustain the cash flow thing. We just
couldn't you have left? You didn't have, did you have to take the whole delivery from the bonded warehouse, or could you have left them there in the bonded warehouse and only taken portions of it?
No. This was when I say bonded warehouse, this is either an airport airline facility or the dock at the port with a container.
Completely uncontrolled.
Yeah, that's it.
No humidity.
Here's your product. Right. So your product comes in, pay for your product to the government, and then we release your product. So back then, bonded was bonded, that was it. So we had to pay for it, and for about 2 years we sustained that. We were like, man, this is killing us. Chicago started killing us because that's where our warehouse was. When we stopped the factory in down here in Tampa, and we had Nestor doing our product, we had him shipped directly to where my father and I were living, which was still in Chicago, working in Chicago. So we set up a warehouse up there. So the warehouse was up there. We were getting the cigars up there. The cost of living up there was getting ridiculous. The cost of doing business was getting ridiculous. The smoking regulations were getting ridiculous. The tobacco tax was getting ridiculous. Everything was one thing after another going like this, right? So 2009, we decided we can't sustain this anymore, and we're going to have to do something. So my father was like, my grandmother was ill back here in Florida, and he moved to be with her. The plan was to retire and then move to live next to her because they bought houses next to each other. So he just accelerated that and said, okay, we're leaving now. So he went ahead and spent time with my grandmother. And then we moved the company down in 2010 in earnest. I mean, lock, stock, barrel. We were able to cut our costs coming down here, cut our overhead, but the big issue was S-chip. The S-chip followed us no matter where we were.
Sure. So how'd you handle that?
When we set up our warehouse down here, we decided to become a bonded facility of our own, which was an expense, but a better expense than killing our cash flow and putting us out of business.
So now you could take the shipment, it could go right into your bonded warehouse.
And until it leaves my facility, which means it's sold, I don't have to pay the government.
Right, so going back to what I was saying earlier, now you could do that because you had, and it would be smart because you had a temperature and humidity controlled environment, you had proper storage, and you could do. Did you do that? Did you expand that for other brands?
So we created the wheel for ourselves, as I just described, right? So we're humming along, and I continue to grow the brand. 2010, 2011, 2012, things are going well. We're slowly getting market share back, expanding, and then other people start coming to us. They were coming to us in Chicago, and I had a few brands that I was blending for and making cigars for. But we were having the same problem because we were asking them, listen, you got to pay the S-chip when it comes in, and that was killing them. Now the ball changed. Now the ball game changed. So it was, listen, we can order the cigars, they can come in, but until they leave our facility, which means you sold, it goes, you get the money from the customer and you give it to the government. So revenue neutral when it comes to taxes. When it comes to the S-chip, right? So suddenly people started getting positive reviews of my cigars, not suddenly, but it was going over time. You know, I got a number 1 cigar here, I got a number 2, I got a 93 here, I got a 92 here. And people were smoking my cigars. People that were interested in getting involved in the industry were smoking my cigars, saying, I'd like to talk to this guy about making a cigar for me. So slowly but surely, I kept accumulating some smaller brands that were coming to me for not only blending and manufacturing, obviously, since anything that I blend is being manufactured at Plasencia, which is in and of itself an opportunity for most people, because the Plasencias their doors aren't open for just anybody. You know, not anybody can just knock on the door and say, hey, I'd like to make me a cigar. That's not how it works, right? So because I was blending for them, I had the facility and the availability of tobaccos from around the world, a vast amount of tobaccos, to make pretty much anything under the sun that I could put my mind to. I had met my mentor when I went down to Plasencia in 2000, and he was working with me until his death in 2000.
That was Dominguez, right?
Yes, that was Oviedo Dominguez. This guy, just to give you guys a little background on him, and I was a sponge with this guy. He was the rolling union president in Cuba for all of the rollers in the entire country. He was the head of production and management at the H. Upman factory and is credited with blending the Monte Cristo 1 and Monte Cristo number 2. He's the guy. And this is the guy that I was able to work with and learn my craft, and he taught me how to continue to expand even beyond. It's kind of like martial arts. You're never done learning. You know, it's just how do you keep learning and how do you develop what you do as things change. Tobaccos change, regions change, hybrids, new things will enter the market. How do you adapt to them? How do you work with them? And I'm here today with my blending and my cigars because of what he taught.
So what was the first Blanco blend that you created?
It was, like, I'm looking on the wall to see if I have something visual to show you guys. It was the Blanco Premier Selection Sumatra,
Okay.
which is an Indonesian Sumatran wrapper, all Nicaraguan filler and binder. And that was the cigar that I blended for coffee.
Okay. And then you've obviously filled out a terrific portfolio of flavor profiles and strength profiles, and you know, there's something in there for everybody. You know, personally, I know, and you know this too, that David sells not only his premium line, but he also has a bundled line called the Primos.
Primos Classic. Primos Classic.
And that cigar, I don't know what it costs today. It was cost a couple of years ago. It was like $2.30 or something by the bundle, right? So
it's between $250, I think, and $370 a stick.
Something like that, right? It's very inexpensive, but it is a phenomenal cigar. It's It's real Indonesian, right? It's just this terrific cigar. It's not.
Comes in 3 wrappers. Comes in natural, which is a Connecticut, a Sumatra, and a Maduro.
Yeah, and that Sumatra, I got hooked on that Sumatra. I bought in bundles of those from David over the years, and it's not one that I would say is the one to go out and work in the yard. I actually would sit down and enjoy that cigar. That cigar is completely underrated in my book.
Yeah, it's a legit smoke.
It's a fabulous smoke.
That's it.
So the Blanco 9, what is the significance of the number 9?
So when we blended this cigar, I had a friend involved, and he came down to Nicaragua with me, and we were testing all these tobaccos, and we just were working and working and working on getting exactly what we wanted, because when the 9 came out, we were looking for something that was a little more hefty. When I was blending the cigar, I was looking for a cigar specifically to fit a certain profile, and it was something a little bit more hefty, thicker smoke, richer smoke, more towards the 3/4 body to heavier body cigar. I hadn't at that time had something filling that section of the profile. And we started out and we came up with a great cigar, and we were like, this is incredible, but this isn't the cigar we're trying to make. It's too light. It's not strong enough. It's got great flavor, but it's not strong enough. So we tweaked it. Number 2 was good. Number 4 was good. We kept tweaking it. We have you kind of have a stenographer on the side of you that's working, and he keeps writing down the blend that you have, and then the change, and then the change, and then the change, and so you don't lose track.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to the 8th one. We're like, man, we're almost there. Let's try changing the ratio of this filler, and let's see what we get. And we smoked that, and we were like, Eureka, this is it. And by that time, we had been smoking all day. We were drinking different things with it, all kinds of stuff. And I couldn't remember anything. And I looked at the guy, and I said, what number was this? And he goes, this is number 9. I said, okay, it's the Blanco 9. That's it. It's as simple as that. I didn't overthink it. It wasn't some mysterious anything. It was just the 9th blend before we got it exactly the way we wanted it. So we called it the Blanco 9. That was it. Too easy.
So you took a break for a while there. I remember seeing you at a number of trade shows. I remember when I first met you and your father 6-7 years ago.
Is that when it was? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And you know, you had your main line, and then you went kind of silent on coming out with new stuff. Because you were working with all these other small brands to help get them on the map, and there wasn't much coming out of Blanco directly, but indirectly, your hand is on a lot of these.
Yeah, so I learned a lot. I actually started, like I said, doing the private label stuff for people that would come to me back in 2004, I think was the first private label I did, way back then. And then there was another one in 2005, another one in 2006, and so on and so forth. Some of them caught, some of them didn't. You know, it was kind of like hit and miss because a lot of these guys had a desire to have a great cigar, but they didn't understand the industry. Or they wanted to do things, and I'm not blowing smoke up my own skirt here. They were new, and I would try to give them some free advice. Let's call it, I acted as a consultant for free, right? Based off the story I just told you about the ups and downs and all the things that I'd gone through to get here, I was trying to lend my experience to help avoid those issues for them. And some took it better than others. Some people were like, listen, thanks for that, but we're going to do it our way. And a lot of the times, those guys went right down the tubes. And it's not one of those I told you so. It's one of those I could see it coming because a lot of these things happened to me. We had to adapt to the world around us. And some of these guys listened and some of them didn't. That being said, I've got probably 12 companies right now that I'm working with, whether they're private labels in the United States or Europe. I have private labels in Germany.
Yeah, because you've been doing a lot of work over in Germany. You're one of the first to move over there, move operations, do things over there.
Yeah. Now, I've been in Germany now over 10 years. That was 2010. So, and I've had good times in Germany and bad times in Germany because it depends on the distributor over there. So I have at least one, or is it two private labels in Germany now? And then I know I have 3 in Holland, one new one coming out here in Sweden. I've got one I was working on for Asia. And then I have some stuff in the United States I do for shops that have like multiple stores and they have house brands. I do stuff for them. And then I have, I had some other brands that now are no longer with me, but are still in existence. And then there's 2 larger brands in the United States that I met. Not only, I might say larger, they're still boutique brands, but ones that are considered that are going to survive and be viable and continue to grow.
Right. Nice. And then this year, was it last year, I guess, you came out with what you're smoking now, the Above and Beyond.
Yes. So
this cigar right here.
Yeah. So how did this happen it was interesting. I had a cigar called the American Legion.
Yes.
And I'm a member of the American Legion. My father, my uncle, we're all members of the American Legion. And we wanted to give back to an organization and donate some money towards an organization that helped military, veterans, and or 501c3s. So we approached the American Legion and said, hey, we got this great idea. We'd like to raise funds for you guys. We're members anyway. How many steak dinners can you have? How many bake sales can you have? How about a cigar? It's a huge market, right? And if relative to anybody will smoke it. It's not just members going to their bake sales and going to their, you know. So they gave us the thumbs up and we became the vendor and I blended a cigar for them. That lasted for about 2.5 years and I was a victim of my own success. Apparently there is a non-smoking culture element to the American Legion. And they no longer wanted their name or logo associated with tobacco of any type, nor alcohol or gambling paraphernalia, which I guess they were doing cards and poker chips and all kinds of stuff. Which, what else do you do at American Legion except drink, smoke, and play cards and gamble? And this is what you do at American Legion.
Did they ban all of that too in the lodge?
All of it. No. Each. It's not a lodge. Those are posts.
Posts.
So all the posts are run independently, but nationally, they're the one that controls the logo and the image and the name usage. It's licensing through them, which is in Indianapolis, by the way. So they said, listen, I remember the adjutant general telling us, you had to send in, the adjutant general is like their president. They call it adjutant general. He said, listen, Dave, I'm really sorry I have to do this. I know we had an agreement and I know blah, 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 but I'm getting too much heat from these guys. It became political and we got to stop this. We can't do this anymore. I said, I'm giving you guys the money. We love the checks, keep them coming, but you can't use our logo and name anymore. I said, yeah, okay, I'll be right on that. And the reason was because it actually cost me $30,000 because I had made product, packaging bands, boxes, all kinds of stuff that they were like, yeah, in the next 2 months, you got to cease. I'm like, well, can you let me at least sell through all this stuff that I manufactured because you told me I had this agreement to be able to make this stuff? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a month or 2 or whatever it was. And I was like, there's no way. So I ended up losing. And I did this brand solely to give them money, not to make money off it. It was just something that I wanted to do. I thought was a good deed because I'm part of the organization. I knew where they were, giving money and how they were helping people. I ended up losing $30,000. That was a kick in the pants, man. Let me tell you. So we said, okay. I told everybody we're gonna have to discontinue, and everybody started screaming, "Don't get rid of the cigar. Don't get rid of the blend. Do whatever you have to do." So we did. So I changed the packaging, I changed the name, I changed the format of how we did it. We had them in 3 sizes: Robusto, Toro, and 6x60. We changed it to this. So what we did.
So that's all predicate.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I had this blend from before 2007 anyway, because I had worked on this blend with somebody else for another project that was there. So this is grandfather. This blend. That being said, I again tried to do something good, and in this time, I figured I control everything if I control the name and the artwork, right? So I found somebody to do the artwork. I found somebody.
Yeah, this company called Immerse Marketing, which my wife owns Immerse Marketing, and David contacted her.
Full disclosure, everybody. So his wife designed this band for us. I was involved in this band, but she does really good work, guys. So she understood I brought her a concept, and I brought her the flag with the name and how it's designed, but it needed work, and I knew that. And 2 heads are always better than 1. I'm not this guy I got all the answers, and I know what I want,
right?
But sometimes I need help.
And you don't have the time to do everything yourself.
Yeah. So I collaborated with your wife, and your wife did all the heavy lifting with regard to getting it the way we wanted. She added some great touches to it that I hadn't even thought of. Like you can't see it here, but there's writing in the background. It's in black on black.
Yep.
That is the oath of office that we all take to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, blah, 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 so help me God. That was her idea. Awesome conceptual idea, and we kept it. But she helped me finalize and finesse and fix all the little things, and she did great work for us. So I'm very happy for that reason. For your wife does great work and has done other things for me, which shall remain nameless at the moment. But this is one of her projects that she did a great job with. So we've had.
So this one is being this is a predicate. So this is all good to go.
Oh yeah.
No FDA issues. Are you putting your hands on anything new? Are you gonna try to produce a non-predicate cigar and go down that road?
So I am lucky enough, as I mentioned to you before, my expertise is in blending. So I have been blending cigars for the past 22 years now. That being said, I have so many blends in the can that can be considered grandfathering that would be new to everybody because by hook or by crook, they're new because they either haven't been to market in the same format or the same size or the same this or same that, but the blend was in production before, that I have the flexibility that I can bring 4 or 5 new things to market that are all grandfathered.
So are we going to see something like that soon?
Yeah, I have 2 new brands coming out. And I think your wife did some artwork for that.
I'm leaving
He's
you
so
leading
slick,
questions.
He's so slick. Yeah, he's leading me there. He's so slick. So yeah, I have another brand called Prince Hall that should be coming out, I don't know, a couple months or less. It should have been already out, guys, but the COVID situation has slowed this train down across the world. I don't have to tell you guys, you're all experiencing it with us. We're all doing the same thing here. So Prince Hall will be coming out, and that comes in 2 wrappers. One is a Habano, one is a Maduro. And they're going to come out in Robusto 5x50, 6x52, 6x60, and yes, here it goes, 7x70. I know, but there's a market out there, guys.
There's a market.
I have to give the customers what they want, and people have asked me to make them, so I'm making them. You know, I'm not going to smoke them. Now, I did have to smoke them to test them when I blended them, because when you start getting something that large in diameter, the blend starts changing with the ratios of fillers.
The burn too. It's a lot
of
of things are involved in those big cigars. It's
so
like a Lancero, the same thing. You know, they're 2 very hard cigars to make.
So I had to smoke it, and you should have seen the looks at the factory down there, because they're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, it's for the American market. Please don't judge me. So it is what it is. But that's coming out. And then I have another cigar coming out this fall, if I can just get back down there to finalize the packaging with the box. The bands are done. The cigars are actually being made now or last week. I mean, they're working on production as we speak. I don't know if they're completely done. But that is going to be called the BG Reserve. And that is going to be the 4th cigar in the line of 5 for Cigar Obsession.
Okay.
And then there'll be a 5th one, which I'm not going to name as of yet, but there will be a 5th one. And I'm hoping that will come out spring of next year. So we have 2 new cigars coming in before the end of the 2020, and 1 coming in 2021, and that's just under the Blanco name. So there might be some others with some of the other brands that I manufacture for. I'm about to release in a couple months a new line of cigars for private label in Sweden, and there might be a 2nd one followed up to that. So yeah, we're doing new stuff. I have a whole shelf. You see this bourbon? And
I see that bourbon, yeah.
So I have shelves of cigars. I have shelves of cigars that are my private blending lab that have been sitting there in my humidor for over a decade. Some are, 2007, some are 2002, 2003, 2004, stuff that I've actually used for other people, and now they're no longer in business, or they didn't listen to my advice, or we can change the sizing and we can change some certain things to change the flavor profile. As you know, I make a cigar in a 5x50 and a 5x58. That's a different cigar.
That's right.
Even if it's the same tobacco. Now I can also change the ratios in the fillers, but it's the same material. So technically all of these are grandfathered blends. And I've got them aged, so I know exactly what they're going to be like and how, So I have to work within the rules and structure of what we're now facing with the FDA. I will go all the way up to the line, but I will not step over the line. You have to follow the law here, and I'm not going to risk my license, my livelihood, my family's legacy, none of that. So we're going to work with, as it stands right now, what the FDA is presenting. But as we all know, that could change as well. None of this is set in stone with the FDA.
Right.
And you know, and I know, we just won,
the warning label.
Correct. We just won that now, and that was over 2 years we've been fighting that, or 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, so this FDA thing, the way it stands right now with the deeming regulation about the grandfathering in 2007 and 2016 August date with anything after that, and the all this could change, and we're praying it does, but we have to be prepared to deal with the new regulations that are going to exist.
Right. You gotta navigate your business according to the rules and regulations that are currently existing and hope for the best.
So you asked me about what all these things that gone on through my, changing this. This is just now the latest.
Right.
I stopped at the S-chip, but after that it was the warning label, the FDA, the smoking bans that we've all been put into, the increase in state tobacco taxes, the CRA. We were one of the founding corporate members of the CRA. We had to bring out an organization for, templated on the NRA for consumers, the CRA, because the consumers didn't have a voice in all this regulation and things that were going on around them. The consumers just wanted to smoke the cigars. So we had to identify how we could bring an organization to life that could have a voice for them. Not for us. We have a few organizations already. But one for consumers, and that's what the CRA is about. So I would ask that if you're not familiar with the CRA, which stands for Cigar Rights of America, please look into that. They're fighting for your rights and the privileges to smoke cigars in certain places, and how much they cost, because they will, if they can't make us illegal, they'll make it so financially inaccessible to people because they'll tax us to oblivion and make it expensive. You won't be able to enjoy a premium adult tobacco product. And we're all adults here. We're not marketing to children.
No.
That's what they keep trying to beat that drum. We are not big tobacco.
No way. We do not market to children. You don't see 16-year-olds hanging out in cigar shops. They'll be escorted out by the patrons before the owner escorts them out.
So now it's 21 and over, right? So again, we're not marketing to children. You cannot buy this product, like an adult beverage, unless you're 21 and over. So now where's the argument that you need to basically eradicate this industry? And that's basically what they're doing through regulation. And I don't want to say that, when I say they, I talk about the anti-smoking culture that is now pervasive in the federal government in certain aspects. I hesitate to use the word deep state, but they're career bureaucrats that are moving in a certain direction. A lot of these guys were working for Smoke Free America, American Lung Association. They tried to move the needle with the Masters settlement, which was against big tobacco, to try to decrease the amount of smoking in this country, and they moved the needle by like 2%, 3%, with no effect. So what they decided, a lot of them, was, if we can't change it in these organizations from outside, we'll quit and we'll go to the federal government and work it from inside. So now most of those people that are trying to obliterate us work for the organizations in the government, and now they're trying to change it through deeming regulation, through overstepping their powers, and it's a power grab. This whole thing that we're talking about with the FDA had to do with a specific law that was targeted to cigarettes.
Two more questions for you. See if we can keep the answers a little shorter. What is your largest U.S. market and your largest international market? What state?
Texas, Florida, as far as the biggest. Yeah.
That's U.S.
And it's kind of, you know what? Because we now have adapted to the current way of doing business in the industry, which is brick and mortar and internet sales through various online retailers, which are also brick and mortars that also have an online presence. It's tough to say because I don't know where the cigars are going. So I do a lot of sales to New York, for example, but I don't know if, I know there's a couple guys in New York that are killing it with online sales for us.
What about internationally?
Germany sells decent. I am doing very well in Holland, but again, I know that they ship over certain boundaries. They're allowed to sell in certain. certain other countries. They can ship to certain, and others they can't. So I know that there's a proliferation of Blanco cigars to certain countries that I don't currently have distribution in Europe, but they're getting them from Holland, maybe Germany.
Right.
Also, I sell in Sweden. I sell in France. We have an agreement with Andorra. I sell in Luxembourg. We're currently closing a deal for Belgium. I'm in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I mean, I was in Romania a couple of years ago. We're open up there. So we have shops in Africa. We're opening up the Middle East. I sell cigars by pallets to Pakistan. So I sell to Malaysia. We sell to Vietnam. So, I mean, the markets continue to grow for us. You know, I don't even know how many countries we're in because I never counted. But you know what I do count? I count the countries we're not in. And I try to check them off the list as quickly as I can. So we continue to work at it.
So this is the point of the show where I'm going to take us into Stogie Press to give a kind of a recap of the week, things that have news and reviews. This past week in Stogie Press, we started the week off with a review of the Pichardo Reserva Familia Habano. Gave this one here a 90. This is an absolutely beautiful cigar. Just gorgeous color. And just well made, nice and oily. Had a really nice burn on it. Good burn cone. Flavors were good. This piece right here is where it probably took some points off because it did a little inside burn halfway down, a little off burn. But overall, very nice smoke. We also reviewed the Crux Limitada 2019. This is actually a spectacular cigar. This is the one that used to be the IPCPCR show special. They've changed it to call it The Show, and this is the one I actually got at the 2019 PCA. So this cigar actually was like a year old when I actually reviewed it. So it really was spectacular. I mean, this is just this beautiful kind of bellicoso looking cigar. They always do this little round. They call it a 109 head. It's kind of a bellicosa head. Their packaging, this now comes in all their new packaging. So they redid all their packaging, redid their logo and everything. So they really amped it up. You could just see this is just a beautiful, beautiful cigar. And the flavors were just spot on.
95. Wow.
Yeah, this is a really good cigar. I took another look at a Blackbird Cigar Company. So I have the 5-pack, I think, or the 5-pack sampler of the Robustos. This is the next one that I looked at was the Blackbird Cuckoo Criollo, and Cuckoo being the cuckoo bird. All right, so we kind of went through that one. That one I gave a 92. As we just talked, the biggest news in the cigar industry last week was this DC Court of Appeals ruled against the FDA for warning labels. So that is a big win for us. The fact that the court used the words arbitrary and capricious in this, and it was a unanimous 3-justice decision. So that could open up some doors as we go forward to further reducing the regulations against the premium cigar industry, and we can only hope that we keep the pressure on and they'll keep moving it along. Our friend Risty from Jossum Crowell, he's another one that has been breaking into the European market like gangbusters over the last few years. He's following along that path. He has just come out with a new Swedish exclusive called the Sota Kata. So that's going to be available in the Swedish market. Alec and Bradley, not Alec Bradley. This is the two brothers. Alec and Bradley cigars are they're going to be featuring their new Kintsugi on their traveling road show. So they're part of a group of cigar manufacturers that are going to be traveling around the country. And since we don't have PCA, they're going to be bringing the PCA, their version of the PCA, to retailers. This is a retailer event, so they're going to be bringing and showcasing their cigars at different retailers around the country. And it's all part of the Traveling Roadshow, and this one will be part of that showcase. Casa Cuevas has announced similar. They are also doing a retailer-only sales event. So they're going to be doing the special week-long sales effort started Friday and ends on July 17th. So that's how they're going to get their word out there and try to build up sales. You'll see more of this. I see more companies doing similar things because of this COVID-19 issue we have. So doing everything they can to get the word out. And then this cigar, another 95. This is just, oh my God. A friend of mine gave me this, Mike Collins. And this is, if you've never had the Oliva Master Blends 3 cigar, you are missing out on a very pleasurable experience. This cigar is just absolutely gorgeous. It just smoked. I mean, look at the burn on this cigar. I mean, the burn cone. I mean, just spectacular all the way through. Absolutely beautiful. It had some really, I called it scrumptious light citrus finish. To get that, it had that finish on the palate that just kind of laid there. It was very light, but it was always there, nice and clean in my book. And it even had what I consider the rare peanut note. I get that once in a while, but not often. So this is a nice medium to full in strength, a good hour and 40-minute smoke. He just sent me today a link to Holtz cigars. You can get a monster sampler of this, 20 of these cigars in the different vitolas you can get for $79.
Wow.
Okay, $79. It's a $240 sample. It's $79. It's out there right now.
Wow.
And I jumped on that. I said that this is going in, and I'll let these age even more in my humidor. Alec and Bradley has announced. Alec Bradley has announced now that they have their 10-year anniversary, fine and rare, set to go on sale. This is unique. What Alan Rubin did was go in through his vault, and they pulled out their fine and rare cigars that have been around for a long time and been aging, 2014, 16, 17, 18 to 19, right? And then you're going to get 5 of each of these plus some undisclosed items, and they're going to retail, I think, for $600 for the set. They come in these this beautiful box right here. So each shelf has a different cigar in it. So yeah, this is pretty big for Alec Bradley, what they're doing. And then today I also pushed out last week's consumer panel on the Stogie Press YouTube channel. So David, it is always a pleasure. Please send my love to your dad and family.
Yeah, absolutely. If I might add, if anybody wants to follow us on Facebook, it's Blanco Cigar Fans. I also have a public page for David Blanco. We also have our YouTube page, Instagram, David Blanco 007, and BlancoCigars.com. If you want to check out our website with all of our products everywhere, just check us out over there.
There you go. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Stay
Taking It
smoky.
to Nub, episode 18 is in the book.